How America perfected the art of overthrowing governments in 5 easy steps. From Iran to Venezuela, Washington has refined a brutal formula for toppling governments. The pattern is unmistakable, the casualties predictable, and experts warn another target may already be chosen. Based on the analysis in India today, I'm going to offer how America toppling governments and replace. America calls itself as a democracy reluctant defender, stepping in only when chaos demands intervention. History tells a darker story. From Iran in 1953 to Venezuela in 2025, the United States has repeatedly crossed the border not with diplomacy but with dollars, disinformation, and brute force. The question is no longer whether America engineers regime change. It is how the formula works, and the answer lies in 5 devastatingly effective steps. 1. The playbook begins with selecting leaders who threaten American economic interests or geopolitical dominance. Leftists, nationalists, socialists, or anyone refusing to play along with US priorities suddenly became a threat. Democracy is optional. Stability is secondary. Compliance is everything. Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran didn't threaten America militarily. He threatened profits by nationalizing Iranian oil in 1953. Jacobo Ribens in Guatemala committed to crime of land reform that challenged the United Fruit Company in 1954. Muammar Gaddafi in Libya controlled resources and rejected Western influence. Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela sat atop the world's largest oil reserves whilst refusing Washington's demands. Each was rebranded from leader to villain. Mossadegh became a communist threat, Ribens became a Soviet puppet, Gaddafi became a brutal dictator, Maduro became a drug lord. The narrative shift is never accidental. It prepares international opinion and provides moral cover for what comes next. Step 2. Strangle the economy. Once the target is marked, economic warfare begins. Sanctions creep in, assets get frozen, aid disappears, trade routes close. The goal, as Nixon once said blatantly, is to make the economy scream. When people suffer enough, unrest becomes inevitable, and unrest becomes useful for Washington politics. Iran has endured maximum pressure sanctions for years. With its currency collapsing and inflation soaring, Venezuela faced the same treatment, watching its economy buckle under targeted financial restrictions. Guatemala's economy was sabotaged through trade manipulation. Economic strangulation produces public anger, which can then be amplified and redirected. The regime gets blamed for suffering that was engineered externally. Dispersion creates the condition for the next phase. Step 3. Cultivate proxies and sow chaos. While economies are strangled, proxies are cultivated. Disgruntled generals, opposition politicians, exiles, business elites, and anyone to flip becomes an asset. Money flows quietly, promises are made, bribes grease the machinery. In Iran, in 1953, a suitcase of cash bought mobs, newspapers, clerics and soldiers. Operation Ajax used bribed politicians, paid protesters, and staged riots to create the appearance of organic uprising. In Afghanistan, $100 million bought loyalty overnight. In Guatemala, mercenaries backed by relentless radio propaganda convinced the military that resistance was futile. The CIA doesn't need mass support. It needs just enough chaos to fracture the state. Psychological operations flood societies with rumors, fake broadcasters, planted stories, and manufactured dissent that looks organic but isn't. Opposition leaders are amplified, brought whilst being isolated at home. Military exercise appears nearby. Diplomatic ultimatums feel like treaties. Step 4. Strike with precision or overwhelming force. When covert tools aren't enough, the playbook shifts to overt force. The method varies depending on circumstances. but the goal remains constant: decapitate or cut the regime quickly and decisively. Panama, in 1989, showed brutal efficiency. Manuel Noriega transformed overnight from CIAC to drug lord Valian. The invasion was fast and overwhelming. Noriega was captured, a friendly government installed, and American power reasserted. Entire neighborhoods burned, but sovereignty was shredded with precision. Iraq in 2003 marked the most brazen evolution, shocked and awe. The justification weapons of mass destruction collapsed almost immediately, but the invasion rolled on. Saddam Hussein fell in weeks. Libya in 2011 refined the model further, with no invasion and no occupation, just air power and proxies. Under the banner of protecting civilians, NATO shattered Gaddafi's forces. Venezuela in 2025 represented peak efficiency. Airstrikes, special operations, decapitation tactics, all calibrated to avoid full invasion while still achieving maximum impact. The capture of Maduro was a statement, the playbook operating flawlessly. Step 5. Instant compliant leadership and declare victory. The final step is replacement and narrative control. Friendly governments are installed. Corporate interests are protected. Military bases are secured. Media declares liberation. Architects move on to the next target. Iran got off the Shah, whose dictatorship was enforced by CIA-trained secret police until revolution exploded in 1979. Guatemala descended into decades of dictatorship, civil war, and genocide. Iraq's purges hollowed out the state, creating unemployed soldiers who became insurgents, leading to sectarian chaos and eventually ISIS. Libya collapsed into militia rule, slave markets, and massive migration. Panama paid its price quietly. This is how America avoid governments who is against its demands. Now the next point is Denmark says we will shoot first if US invades Greenland. But with what? Denmark has warned that its troops were under standing orders to shoot first and ask questions later if Greenland is attacked by the US. But can the Danish army take on the might of the US in case of military invasion or Venezuela-like operation? This is a question of political analysis. Fresh from his military operation in Venezuela, US President Donald Trump now wants Greenland by hook or by crook. Denmark, which is 0.44% the size of the US and controls Greenland, has fallen back on the 1952 Cold War era directive issues to its troops. Shoot first, ask questions later. The increasingly aggressive rhetoric by Trump has sent tensions soaring in Europe and among the NATO alliance members. But can the Danish army take on the might of the US in case of a military invasion or Venezuela-like operation? The answer is simple: no. In fact, there is nothing to prevent the US from taking over Greenland militarily. Under a little-known 1951 Cold War agreement, the US already enjoys sweeping military access in Greenland. In fact, it has brought rights to set up military bases there with the consent of Denmark and Greenland. Presently, the US already has more than 100 military personnel stationed at its Pitufik base in the Arctic island. Thus, Trump can simply surge the number of personnel on the island under the treaty with Denmark to capture territory. Can Denmark defend Greenland? Raise question. On this part, Denmark is taking Trump's threat of military action seriously. The Mette Frederiksen government has warned that its troops were under standing orders to shoot first and ask questions later if Greenland was attacked by the US. It is a part of 1952 military directive that still remains in force. Under it, Danish forces have the freedom to counter-attack invading troops without awaiting formal orders from commanders or the government. Moreover, the Danish defense minister also said Denmark would spend $13.8 billion to rearm Greenland. However, such enthusiastic talk cannot dwarf the realities of Denmark's limited military strength. An analysis showed that US military manpower outweighs that of another NATO members. According to the global firepower rankings, the US is at the top of the chart in terms of military strength. Denmark is ranked 45th. The US has 1.3 million military personnel compared to the rest of the NATO alliance collective 2.1 million personnel. In fact, Denmark has the lowest number of armed forces within NATO, with a strength of roughly 17,300 personnel, fewer than the manpower of India's Coast Guard alone. The Danish army comprises around 8,000 personnel, smaller than a single Indian army infantry division, which typically has 10,000 to 15,000 combat troops. The Royal Danish Navy has approximately 3,500 personnel, a figure comparable to the combined crew strings deployed abroad. India's aircraft carriers INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya. Denmark operates about 9 frigates and does not have any submarine. In a hypothetical situation, assuming that the Danish military and the allies do intervene in case of US invasion, the fight would be over in a day, experts said. Over the past few days, Trump has also claimed without concrete proof that the Arctic region was covered with Russian and Chinese ships, while trying to justify his Greenland gambit. However, Trump rhetoric lies to stark reality. It is Greenland's strategic location, wedged between Europe and North America. Greenland is a critical site for the US ballistic missile defense system as well as monitoring of the vessels in the region. But according to experts, Greenland's location is not the only thing that has attracted Trump. The US president is also said to be eyeing Greenland's vast deposit of critical minerals as he tries to reduce dependence on China's exports. With a US president who looks seemingly unafraid of upending the world order, Denmark and Greenland need to be on their toes as tensions rises. I share this essay from India Today. Please subscribe and share and comment to my tube. Thank you very much.